Country Cast, we're going to be taking a trip underneath the light of a neon moon with none other than country's mega duo, Brooks and Dunn. So let's go ahead and take a look into who Brooks and Dunn were before they were actually Brooks and Dunn. First up is Leon Eric Brooks III, aka Kix Brooks, who was born in Shreveport, Louisiana on May 12, 1955. And at a young age, Kix Brooks was neighbors to one of country music's legendary artists known as Johnny Horton. Kix started to sing and play guitar at the age of 12 years old, and it would be alongside Johnny Horton's daughter. Kix would go on to attend high school in Tennessee and continue with his music, where he would write songs and play gigs at local venues. Brooks would then go off to college, but before finishing his degree, he would actually head west to Alaska, where he worked for his father on the oil pipeline. Kix, however, returned to college at Louisiana Tech University and would finish his degree, where he majored in theater. That probably explains why Brooks was more of the showman on stage than Ronnie Dunn. After finishing college, Kix would now head northeast all the way to Maine and would get into the advertisement business. Brooks began writing advertisements for a company belonging to his sister and brother-in-law. Now, advertisements would not be all that Kix focused on while in Maine. He also began performing music again at local bars within the area. Then the 1980s would come, and that is when Kix Brooks would make another journey. But this time, he would end up in Nashville, Tennessee, and get a job as a songwriter with Tree Publishing. Now, as a songwriter, Brooks wrote songs for several big-time acts, such as the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. And during this time, Kix was also trying to get his solo career moving forward, but the release of his first single titled Baby When Your Heart Breaks Down in 1983 would get no traction. Then, taking another shot with his solo career, Kix recorded his debut album, which was self-titled in 1989 for Capitol Nashville Records, where it also featured his first single, Baby When Your Heart Breaks Down, and the later hit single for McBride and the Ride titled Sacred Ground. And again, just like his first single, his debut album would not gain any momentum. However, 1 year later, he would find what he was missing with his music. But before we get to that, this leads me to the second half of the duo, and that's Ronnie Dunn. Ronnie Gene Dunn was born in Coleman, Texas. Dunn also began playing music in his teenage years, but he would also be on the path of trying to become a minister. And he would attend college at Abilene Christian University with studies in psychology. However, due to the school's values, they would give Ronnie an ultimatum where he would have to choose his music career or school. And this choice was given due to Ronnie playing gigs, which were at bars. Ronnie Dunn made his decision and headed to Tulsa, Oklahoma to pursue music and recorded for a local record label from the years 1983 to 1984. Now fast forward to 1988, where Ronnie had entered a songwriting contest and won, and his winnings would include a recording session in Nashville, Tennessee. Ronnie obviously would go on and record with producer Scott Hendricks, who ended up giving some of Dunn's recordings to Tim Dubois, who was with Arista record label. It was this moment that the idea of pairing Kix Brooks with Ronnie Dunn would come alive. Brooks and Dunn would become a duo in the year 1990 and would elevate country music to a whole nother level. But how did Kix and Ronnie meet? Well, after Tim from Arista Records got a hold of Ronnie's recordings, the two would meet over enchiladas. Kix Brooks had this to say about the meeting on Larry King Now. Kix said, "We met completely out of the blue and we met on a Tuesday. A record company guy convinced us we should be a duo. And on a Tuesday over an enchilada is when I met him." Brooks goes on to explain that they thought it was a silly idea due to them not knowing one another, but of course they decided to give it a shot, and thank God they did. Brooks continued with what happened next. Kix explained that Tim from Arista asked them just to do him a favor and said, "Well, both of you guys are good writers, man. Just do me a favor. Just as songwriters, get together and see if you can just hit it off." And we wrote Brand New Man that Thursday and a song called Next Broken Heart Friday. And they were our first two #1 records. Ronnie had already written Neon Moon and Boot Scootin' Boogie, so we had 4 #1 records in a row. I guess you can say the rest is history, and that meeting over the enchiladas was a meal that the two will never forget. And like Kix said, Brooks and Dunn would be formed, and it all started with their debut record titled Brand New Man in 1991. The title track of the record was also Brand New Man, and it would go #1 on what is now known as Billboard's Hot Country Songs chart in 1991. That wouldn't be the only successful single from the debut record. Brand New Man featured 3 more songs that would be released as singles, and they were titled My Next Broken Heart, Neon Moon, and Boot Scootin' Boogie. All 3 of those songs would also make their way to number 1 on the Billboard charts, and this was the first time for any country music group to have their first 4 singles go number 1, and the record has since gone platinum 6 times. Kix and Ronnie had been trying for some time to get their music careers off the ground, but after the 2 of them got together and released Brand New Man, they knew they had finally found that extra spark. Brooks and Dunn went on to make outstanding records, and their studio albums after Brand New Man consist of Hard Workin' Man, Waitin' on a Sundown, Borderline, If You See Her, Tightrope, Steers and Stripes, and a Christmas record titled It Won't Be Christmas Without You, Red Dirt Road, Hillbilly Deluxe, and Cowboy Town. Now, as of April 2019, Brooks and Dunn have released their newest record titled Reboot, where it features other country music artists where they have teamed up and collaborated with Brooks and Dunn on some of their greatest songs. Through the years, Brooks and Dunn has seen astronomical success from their records, and the ones that have went on to be certified platinum are Hard Workin' Man, which has been certified platinum 5 times, Waitin' on Sundown 3 times, the 2-time platinum album Borderline, If You See Her went platinum twice, and the 1-time platinum records are Steers and Stripes, Red Dirt Road, and Hillbilly Deluxe. Even 3 of their greatest hits albums have also went platinum, and those are Number 1s and Then Some, Greatest Hits Volume 1, and Greatest Hits Volume 2. And on top of all the records, they have also released 50 singles, which 20 of them have reached number 1 on Billboard's country charts. Don't think that Brooks and Dunn was only successful when it came to recording, because they have also taken home the award for Entertainer of the Year 3 times, coming from the ACM Awards and once from the CMAs. The duo has also won 2 Grammy Awards, and won in 1994 for Best Country Performance by a Group for their song Hard Workin' Man, and again in 1997 for their hit song My Maria, which was actually a cover song originally recorded by Buckwheat Stevenson in 1973. However, even after all that success, and after 20 years of being one of country music's most dominant duos, Brooks and Dunn would decide to go ahead and call it quits. During the interview with Larry King Now, Kix Brooks went into some of the thought that went into making that decision. Kix said, "Well, after 20 years, we said, this is a good time. We're getting to that point in our lives where I was interested in doing a lot of things, and I know both of us, Ronnie for sure, wanted to make a record where he didn't want to look over his shoulder." Kix went on to say, "I totally get it. Go do it, man." Kix explained at the time during this interview in 2016 that Ronnie was working on a project, and Kix had already made 5 movies by this time, opened a winery, and was doing a cooking show. The movies that Kix produced were titled Home by Spring, You're Gonna Miss Me, American Country Countdown Top 10 Stories of 2015, A Country Christmas, and Dug Up. Kix also started his winery, known as Arrington Wineries, where he is part owner. And his cooking show is called Stakeout with Kix Brooks, where he goes out and tries to find the best steakhouses in America. Ronnie also stayed busy himself and started his solo music career again and took on photography. Ronnie's debut solo album was self-titled and released in 2011. And since that release, he has had 2 more solo albums titled Peace, Love, and Country, released in 2014, and his newest titled Tattooed Heart, released in 2016. Ronnie Dunn also took time to do photography and has become quite the cameraman at rodeos. Now, even though the 2 seemed to do well for themselves after the split, it didn't happen without some tension before their final tour, the Last Rodeo, in 2010. Ronnie Dunn spoke with USA Today and went into how there was tension when it came to song choices. Dunn said, 20 years, that's a long time to go fishing in the same well. You're within the confines of things that work for 2 guys on stage. Creatively, you do have some fences there." Kix would say, "We both knew this was probably it. He called back the next day and said, I don't want to do this anymore, and I was in agreement. I really was. I was willing that day to try and work it out, but when he said this is it, I really think it is. I said, I think it is too. I was and still am totally at peace with it. It's a good time for us to stop." Dunn also said, "Looking back, we should have just taken a break and let all the dust settle under us." And if y'all remember, there was a post made by Ronnie Dunn on Facebook in October of 2013 where fans wondered what it actually meant. Ronnie's post read, "Will you do some trivia research for me? First, the last Brooks and Dunn #1 was what song and what year? Number 2, what year did Kix take over American Country Countdown?" This post would stir up quite the conversation, and Kix Brooks responded to this where he said, "This one really makes me sad. Whatever you got going on with your attack on radio now is certainly your business. But when someone said you'd implied that my hosting ACC had something to do with any lack of B&D success at radio, I didn't believe it. If you remember, ABC, not Cumulus, signed me back in '06, a big network. But every major network without exception carried the show throughout our carrier. I sat down with you and asked you what you thought, and said I would never do it if you thought there was any chance it would not be good for us. You encouraged me to do so. It's been really fun for me. Today our dear friend Reba called to congratulate me on winning the National Air Personality Award. I was so excited, and then I read this. I cherish the years we made music and ran the road together. Thanks to these fans, we certainly got to live the dream. I've always admired your singing, and I think you've always been admired for being one of the best. Not sure what all this is about. Wish all our fans the best. This music was for you. Thanks for the ride. Let's take a break on the hate." Ronnie Dunn would follow up with a comment on his original post where he explained the beginning of the end of Brooks and Dunn, and it said, "This is about the competitive environment of conglomerated radio. Nothing negative about the guy in the cowboy hat. Play Something Country was the last #1 B&D had. Kix taking over the countdown on a major conglomerate's network in a highly competitive environment was the beginning of the end for B&D. Now obviously Brooks and Dunn would get back in the saddle and returned in 2015 for a residency show in Las Vegas at the Coliseum at Caesar's Palace. But they would not make their return alone. The show would feature the Queen of Country Music and their good friend, Reba McEntire. And since their iconic return, Brooks and Dunn seemed to be all smiles and having a great time being back together. One of their most recent major achievements was that Brooks and Dunn are now inductees into the Country Music Hall of Fame and will be inducted later in 2019. And the most recent project was their newly released album titled Reboot, which features several of country's biggest stars such as Luke Combs, John Party, Cody Johnson, Ashley McBryde, Midland, and plenty more. The songs on the album are some of B&D's biggest hits, from Brand New Man, Neon Moon, Red Dirt Road, My Maria, Boot Scootin' Boogie, Mama Don't Get Dressed Up for Nothing, Believe, Ain't Nothing 'Bout You, Hard Workin' Man, Lost and Found, and My Next Broken Heart. Reba McEntire and Brooks and Dunn will also be back again in Las Vegas to perform more shows in 2019. So go out and take a listen to B&D's new Reboot album, and you can check out Kix Brooks on his YouTube channel, Kix Brooks Radio, where you see him interview the biggest names in country music. And thank you, Kix and Ronnie, for bringing great country music to us fans for years. And I hope there is plenty more to come from two of country's most legendary cowboys. Alright y'all, thanks for tuning in. That's it for today's video. Make sure you hit that subscribe button down at the bottom and turn those notifications on for breaking updates on your favorite country artists and all the news coming right out of Music City. Y'all stay country.